Hello guys and welcome back to another video. Today I want to show you guys 10 tips, tricks and features of Golang that you perhaps did not know, but that will help you in your Golang journey. First up we have the new function. So imagine this case we have this type hello struct and a world pointer. We wish to assign a basic simple value such as a string, a primitive value such as an integer or a string, and we want to provide this as a pointer. Well, up until Go 1.26 we couldn't do this in a nice way. We would cannot use this thing as a string pointer value. We would have to write it into a separate variable first, something like this, and then take the address of that. But we can actually now create a pointer very easily with the help of the built-in new function. So we can do new world, and if we then try and run this, then we can see that that works beautifully. So this becomes much cleaner than first having to create a new variable for it. This also works when dealing with generic type parameters. So suppose you wish to create a pointer to this type t that we have, we can now do this with new t instead of having to do something like a var t and then using ampersand on that. We can just do new t immediately. Something else you might not have heard of is the init function, which is useful when dealing with packages. So in this case we can actually define a function called init, which will run whenever this package is imported. So if I go ahead and actually run main.go, we can see that it actually prints out hello from my package, the first thing that it does, because it will actually run this init function whenever we have imported it. We can see that we first get hello from my package, then hello from main, and then we get go rocks. And this init function can actually be used multiple times in the same file. We could actually define another init function, and it will be based on the actual order of how they are placed within the file. So where this becomes really useful is if you have initialization logic that you really want to run. Suppose you have a database package and you want to make a connection to the database the first thing that you do. Well, you can do that with the init function, and in this case we will initialize this. This is just a dummy database. But if we run this, we can now see that this is actually being connected. We have actually initialized the database before we make any subsequent requests to anything in this package. Type switching is also really awesome in Go, but did you know that you can actually infer the values types immediately and use them without having to do any casting? You can actually switch based on a type and then assign it to it. In this case we assign it to the exact same name, which means that we can now use it as if it was actually a string. So now we can with a guarantee know that this is a string. We can actually pass it into the string contains function, and if it's an integer we can actually do integer operations on this. So if I run this now, we can see it first does contains hello because this is a string, it's an any type. If I were to actually switch this out to maybe 2, then it's an integer all of a sudden. And we can now see that it prints meaning of the universe, which is the case when it's actually an integer. So named return values are a bit funky in Go, but did you know that you can actually refer to them in the deferral of the function? So this defer will, of course, as you might know, run whenever this function has already returned or after the execution of this function. This is actually useful because we can actually inspect the return values that we are about to return. In this case, we can actually print out the error. So if we run this now, we can see that we get back error returned boom. That's because we pass in 2, but if I were to pass in 43 instead, we can see that we get bang because it's actually greater than 42. So we can actually inspect the return values that we are about to return. We can actually check if there is an error to be returned. We could do some cleanup here. We could close the database connection, for example. So it's really useful to use these named return values when we want to do some cleanup. Here we have another trick in Golang called method expression. So suppose we have this map function. All it does is take in a slice of t and perform some transformation on it and return the transform values, the traditional mapping function. And we have a bunch of users that we wish to map over. We want to compose their first name and their last name together. So if I run this now, it works perfectly fine. But it's a little bit verbose, right? We have to pass in this anonymous function, func user, and take that user and return user.name. Couldn't we do this in a cleaner way? Yes, we can in fact do that. So we can kind of make this name method here an expression in and of itself. We can actually pass in user.name as an actual function here. So this will become a function that takes in an actual user and returns their name. So it becomes like a higher order function. This is very common if you're working in more functional programming languages. And you can see that the behavior is exactly the same. And this can also be showcased if we assign this to a variable. So we assign the function. If we take a look now, we can see that we actually have a function that passes in a user and returns a string. So we can run this get username function on a specific user. In our case, maybe the first one in the slice. And we can see that we get back Jan Doe. So a really nice way of writing cleaner code. Another nice feature of Go is that we have some really nice range support, so we can take a little bit of a subset of this slice. So we can get from index 1 to an index 2 in this case, since this is exclusive. And if we run this now, we can see that we get back B, which is 2 and 3. Now you might actually want to do something with this B. You might want to add to this, and this is actually a pointer to the original array that we have, the A slice actually. So if I were to add something to B, let's say I do append B and I want to add another number, maybe I want to add 9 to this, so I get 2, 3, and 9. We can see that this will actually mutate the original array, which is A. This was actually a bit surprising to me when I first saw it, because I thought this was fully immutable and that we would actually have a copy of this slice, but we do not. So we have actually a pointer to A, and when we append something to it, we would actually start appending to the next position in memory, which would be this 4. So we overwrite that 4 with a 9. Perhaps not what we wish to do. But luckily, Golang developers have thought of this. So we can actually set a capacity of this slice. So if I were to set the capacity to be 3 instead, this means that we have a capacity of 2 elements really. It means that when I append to this, Golang will actually have to allocate new memory to fit this slice, which means that we would not be overwriting it. So if I go ahead and run this again, we can see that this original slice is left untouched, while we have added the 9 as we expected to the end of the B array only. Something that was introduced in Golang 1.23 is the concept of iterators. And iterators are very common in other languages as well. Suppose we have this custom data structure. We have a very basic data structure. This is just a slice of integers. That's the underlying representation. And we want to loop over all of these elements. That would be all fine, right? We have this elements, we can actually just call that and range over these elements, and it would be no problem. We can just go run this, no problem whatsoever. But we actually want to package this into our own package. We want to have this in DS. We want to place this over here and do some fun things with it. And of course we have to actually rename that, since we can't use the same name. But if we import this, we can see that this actually becomes a problem now, because we have this unexported. And that is exactly what we want it to be. We don't want to export the underlying representation. We might have a specific invariant for this data structure that we want to uphold. We don't want someone to get their dirty hands on this underlying representation. We want to have functions that do sensible operations on the data structure. We can't really make it this easy then. We can't just range over the elements property that we have. So the traditional way of solving this is to use something like a visitor pattern, where we, instead of ranging over it directly, we pass in a callback function and let the underlying data structure kind of notify us about the presence of the items that it stores. So we pass in this push function, which will actually push all of the elements in the array. And the idea behind this bool value here is that we don't need to push more items than we actually want to consume. Suppose I only want to have the first 2 elements. I don't need to range over the entire array for that. But if we run this now, we can see that it works beautifully, but it gets a bit verbose. We have to actually pass in a callback function and handle it like this. Luckily now, with the help of Golang 1.23, we have iterators, and they also introduced something called sequence. So we can actually make this code much nicer. We actually have some nice syntactic sugar for it. So in order to do this, we have to return iter.sec, which is actually just an alias for this behemoth of functions. So it'll actually be a function that passes in the callback function. It has a very similar structure to the one that we had previously. We simply pass in the value and we return a bool when we want to stop early. And when we have this sort of structure, when we have a sequence, we can actually iterate it over it immediately in Golang. So it has built-in support for this. We can actually range over the elements, and it leads to much cleaner code in the client side, because we can just do dsa.elements and range over that and get out the values without having to be verbose and pass in an anonymous function. And if I run this now, we can see it behaves just like it did before. But it looks much nicer. Something else which is really convenient in Golang is conditional compilation. So we can actually compile different versions of the Go code based on some flags. Supposedly, if you're on a different operating system, you want to have maybe different implementations based on that. Or we can even have, for testing pipelines and similar, we can set the tags to select which version that we want to use. So in our case, we have debug and release. We have two functions, both called meaning, and they will have different meanings depending on which version we are running. So the meaning of life in release mode will be 42. And when we are in debug mode, it will actually be 1337. Run, we can see that the meaning of the life is 42. But if I want to compile the different version, which is the debug version, we can run this with tags debug instead. And we can see that this is conditionally compiled to 1337 instead. You can also have full expressions here. You might want to have another tag here. You can do and cat, you can do or dog, for example. You can play around with this. Something else that is sort of part of the compilation step is embedding. So it's actually possible to embed binary files or anything you can think of really directly in the Golang output binary. So this is really useful, for example, if we want to embed a web application. We might want to have a front end that is written in another framework. Perhaps you have a React application and you want to actually embed it directly in your Go executable without having all of the React files spread out. We can actually put it directly in the file. And this is just a very basic example that embeds this index.html file and just outputs this value when we run it. I can check out this embedded page, which we have actually also stored here. So to show that this actually works, let's build the output binary. Let's call it backend. And then in fact, I'm actually going to delete index.html altogether so that it's actually not part of any of the file system anymore. And if I go ahead and run the output binary and go back to the browser, we can see that it still works because it has been embedded into the output binary. Something else that makes writing Golang code a bit easier and less verbose are the new maps and slices packages which were added to the standard library in Golang 1.21. So we actually have some built-in functionality for things such as slices and maps, which are very common to work with. You might want to check if a slice contains a specific element. We don't have to write a fat for loop. We can just do slices.contains. And if we run this, again, we can see that it contains 2, but it doesn't contain 42. We can do a whole bunch of other operations from this. We can do slices.sort, for example, so we can sort this in place. So if I run this and actually print out ABC afterwards, you can see that it's now sorted in correct order. And this nice maps package we can also use, for example, if we want to copy a map, we can overwrite the existing keys if we have any, but in this case we have just A, B, and C. If we copy them into destination, we can see that it will expand this with those values. If I were to set A here to 2, it would overwrite this key to 2 instead. And of course, we can also combine these two packages. So this is another example of the iterators that were added in Go 1.23. This just returns all of the keys of this map, and we can collect them so we can get a slice of all the keys in this map. And if we run this, we can see that we get A and C, which are the ones that we have actually added to these two maps. So those are the 10 tips, tricks, and features that I wanted to show in Golang. How many of them did you actually know about? Let me know in the comments below. Also feel free to join my Discord channel if you want to be part of the community. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.